Good evening, everybody. Welcome to tonight's installments of the German Lost Art Foundation's Kolloquium, a series of talks on all things related to provenance research. As most of you know already, my name is Susanne Meyer-Abich, and I run the help desk, that is the contact point for inquiries about Nazi-looted art. I will have three guests with me tonight, and we will discuss the project that they're working on and related context. If I could just ask everybody to keep their mics and cameras off, apart from our speakers, while we go through the preliminary presentations, because I think that'll help us all with the system. And thank you, of course, for joining us on such a fantastically beautiful evening and not be outside and rather be with us. I hope we will make it worthwhile and that you will enjoy this evening. I just wanted to say that so that you know where we're heading. Of course, we will talk about the project on the Adolf Sultan family, but we had the idea that we would have a subtitle to our colloquium, and we wanted to call it the Working Report on Opportunities in Provenance Research for Collaboration, Memory and Training. So collaboration, memory and training will all make an appearance tonight. And what I hope to explore with my guests is the kind of critical analysis also of the current situation for training provenance researchers and the challenges and the opportunities. So with regard to training, if I may just go into a little preamble, in 2017, the then State Minister for Culture and the Media emphasized the importance of sustainably anchoring provenance research in academia. A year later, we had 3 junior professorships created for provenance research with slightly different weightings, on the subject, in Hamburg, Munich, and Berlin. And in 2019, the Lüneburg University created a professorship, and then in 2023, Bonn University followed. Out of these positions, only the positions at the Leuphana in Lüneburg and in Bonn today remain. The establishment of these jobs created what showed definitely a political will to establish a training path for students who wanted to work in provenance research. And that made sense because the first generation of provenance researchers were essentially self-taught in a field sitting in between art history, economics, and social science, and with a strong focus on archival research and the interpretation of historical sources. So demand for these skills, as we all know, continues to grow as it became clear how big the task was and that there was absolutely no end to it. The Provenance Research Association now has nigh on 500 members. So where did all this training plan and, anchoring it in academia go wrong, I wonder? Current coalition contract states that provenance research needs to be strengthened, and a concrete concept is to follow. So that should be interesting to see. And we have tonight practitioners of training in provenance research. And I should actually make it clear, while sort of slightly, complaining about the situation, that it is, of course, possible to train as a provenance researcher in Germany and elsewhere. You just can't start out doing it. You have to do something else first. You have to be an art historian, a historian, or whatever else. And then you can do the continued training. So it's better than nothing. I wonder whether that's the ideal situation, but perhaps some of you will have an opinion on that. I'm going to introduce my guests. So tonight we have with us people in the middle of a research project funded by the Lost Art Foundation, and they are located or connected to academia. They're part of a rather special training exercise, which occurred not so much by design, but evolved, I think, more or less by accident. And this is also what I would like to discuss with them. First of all, guest of honor, Barani Guttsmann. Barani came to Berlin in 2022 to care for a great aunt who was a Holocaust survivor. And Her research on her family's roots in Berlin led her to contact the Lost Art Foundation, and that's how we met. And well, when we started talking, I think neither of us could envisage where this would lead and what would happen, and that we would be sitting here tonight. Barani's focus has been for 30 years on resolving stalemates in situations of what I hesitantly refer to as maybe social divergence in the widest possible sense, and on finding options, as she says, that move everyone forward. And I think that's a great concept. Her goals are substantial. Her current project, her private project, is entitled Hello, My Name is Human. And that's her quest. This is the most recent example for her quest for bridging cultures and making room for positive experience. And the goal is to allow us all to coexist in a mutually respectful and caring environment. And this collaborative approach has very much informed the project that we will talk about. Second, we have present Meike Hoffmann, who is at Freie Universität Berlin and has been instrumental in developing training in provenance research for many years. And she's also published widely on the subject. She was, of course, the lead on the Mosse Art Research Initiative, as well as the Abraham Adelsberger Art Research Project. And she also leads the Research Center on what's called Degenerate Art and was a member of the task force on the Schwabing Art Trove. She's now working on the project we will talk about tonight. That is the cultural property of the Berlin entrepreneur, Dr. Adolf Sultan, and his family. Once again, as I said, funded by the Lost Art Foundation. And her team closely involves Barani Guttsmann as the descendant of the Sultan family. And our third guest, Alexander Boll, who was a student on the project last winter semester. He has parallel careers, I'm told. He is acting, writing, he's a musician, but he's also a budding provenance researcher. And as a student in the Sultan seminar, he did some archival research which revealed to the family quite exciting and new information. And we will hear more about that, I think. So I, without further ado, will hand over to Barani, who will give us an idea of the project and introduce the family. Over to you, Barani.
Thank you. And thank you, everybody, for joining us today. I am very grateful that you have taken the time on this very nice and beautiful Monday to sit in front of your computer and participate with us. And I also want to thank the DZK for funding this project. Yes, Susanna is correct. This is beyond my wildest expectations. And specifically, I really would like to call out the help desk, which Susanna is the director of, for her support since our very first email exchange, which was on March 28th. And she responded the next day, not put off by my 15 email attachments and verbosity. So that was already a good sign. And the help desk is really a North Star in an overwhelming sea of information. And to put it from the perspective of an heir, and when I was just in the beginning of this research, there's a lot of different places that you can go and collect information, but there isn't really this one place where you can go, you know, just everything in your hands and be like, well, what's this? And what do I do with it? And is there anything I can do with it? And that somebody takes the time and to guide you and to really set what is possible and what is not possible. And that's also really important. I think there's a lot of misperceptions around what restitution and who can get what back. And so even just being able to have answers in a really clear and concise way that also feels friendly and welcoming, I think is a real boon. So how this all started was, as Susanna said, I came to take care of my great aunt, but I had always wanted to, and I'm just going to set my timer because I want to make sure that I am staying on time. I had really always wanted to research my family in Germany, and my grandparents were really not into that idea for obvious reasons. And eventually I found my way here and decided, now that I was here, I was going to go as far and wide and deep as possible. And there was one other piece. We had received furniture back from, it was furniture designed and made by Richard Riemerschmidt from the Museum for Kunst und Gewerbe in Hamburg. And that was in the late 80s. And it had been determined that this was Nazi-looted furniture. And at the time, I remember, and then later on, the family talked about, well, there was art. And they talked about the artist Ludwig von Hoffmann. And outside of these two pieces, there was one other piece. I knew that there was murals made, and they were of naked ladies. I didn't have a lot else to go on. And the people who did have answers have long since passed away. And my father really just didn't know much else. In fact, he didn't think it was possible to find anything about anything in the family. And so I asked a lawyer who had worked with us on a restitution for company assets years before that, for 15 years, to come with me to Landesarchiv. And we went there and he looked at the files, and I remember him quickly going through it. And he said, well, and the reason he came was because I said, well, there was a lift. And that was something my father always said, well, there was a lift. What happened to the lift? And that was, I didn't know at the time that was a key word to get people excited, because if there was a lift, there could be maybe lists. And so he was looking for the lists, a shipping document or something. And that didn't exist in the file. But I saw something, and mind you, this whole time, and I don't read German or speak German, I am holding Google Translate with my phone over these files over his shoulder. And I happened to see something that said, 5,000 books. And I thought, okay, but he's saying, well, there's no list. I said, well, what about this library, the 5,000 books? And he said, forget it. You'll never find it. It's not possible unless you have an ex libris. And then he was closing everything. And I walked him out, he said goodbye, and I thought, okay, now I'm going to go look. And so I went through the files. Later on that night, I went home and I just Googled Adolf Sultan and Ex Libris. And I found my first book at the Freie Universität, where we are today, in their library. And then I found the second and the third book. And the third books were a volume set in a private place, a bookstore in Austria. And they actually sent me the books back and didn't ask for payment. And that already now I reached out to the library here, and I reached out to the Anna Amelia Library, which actually came a little bit later, about these two books. And I had such a wonderful reception back. And this made me think, there is more information, but one must learn how to find it. Well, how does one go about doing that? So I went about it in a very rudimentary way, which was I just started digging, and trying anything that looked like it made sense, I kept. And one of the things that I found was a dissertation, and I didn't know at the time, it had a write-up about the Sultan Villa, which had also been designed and built by Richard Riemerschmidt. And it also came with depictions and drawings of where the art might have been in the rooms. And interestingly, I don't find that out until Dr. Hoffmann sends me that later on. But I bring all of this, and on March 28th, 2023, I send this email to Susanna at the help desk and say, I think that there's existing art somewhere, and how do I go about finding it? So that is the beginning of the project. So let me just take you through, just introduce you to the family, and then to tell you in the end why here and what was so important about partnering with the Free University and Dr. Hoffmann. And this really comes down to a representation of who our family was and is, what would they have wanted. And it really was just such a natural fit. So I'm going to share this. Can everybody see that? Great. So the Sultan Victorious Guttsmann family, 3 names, 1 family. And this quote was in a little post-it in my grandfather's files. It is possible to record the historical physiognomic image of a whole generation. And with enough knowledge of physiognomy, can't speak, to make that image speak in photographs. And I think this really applies to our family. So this is the Sultan Victorious Guttsmann family, and you can see there's a lot of different family members. And what was really cool about this is that it is a play that's being put on for Adolf and Koba's 25th wedding anniversary. And here you have Adolf and Kolba Sultan. These are the head of the family. They were married before, where Victorious comes in to Adolf, and I'm going to try not to go too much into the family tree. Adolf was married to Koba's husband's sister. So they were linked before. Both their husband and wife die at an early age, the brother and sister, and both had children from their first marriages. And as you can see here, this is the new Sultan Victorious Guttsmann family, and that is Herbert, Claire, Annie, Kurt, and Kata Victorious. And the one thing that my grandfather said was that the house, there was no this family, this family. They were just one big family. There was no talk anymore of where people came from and who was whose father. And they all called Koba mother. And she treated them equally. Nobody was different. And this was really amazing, especially for that time. So here you have the Villa Sultan. This is the villa built by and designed by Richard Riemerschmidt. And I would like to also thank, who has been an incredible partner and help, as you'll see in the upcoming photos, the Technical University in Munich, because through them, I learned a lot. I mean, absolutely every drawing of the house. And so you really got to see what went into designing this new family home. And the reason they move here is because they have outgrown their space. So you'll see here, as you can see here, these are the drawings from the Technical University in Munich. And over here, this is the linchpin in where my research starts. I find this photo in the archive in the Technical University, and I go, aha, there's art. One picture on the wall, but where there's one, there must be more. And I have no idea who's painted this. This is why you need proper provenance researchers and art historians. And turns out it's a Ludwig von Hoffmann, but she is a naked lady, and that matched with the other pieces of information that I had. Ludwig von Hoffmann, naked lady, Villa Sultan, and there we go. So sometimes it is a little bit, you have to start pulling on that thread. So, and here we have Adolf Sultan, painted by Max Liebermann, and Koba Sultan standing in front of the books in the library, the books that we couldn't find, and also bookshelves that we now have by Richard Riemerschmidt. And you can see here the Sultan Kinder. And now we have the addition of little Wolfgang and Greta Sultan. And Wolfgang and Greta are from Koba and Adolf together. And now this makes up the Sultan Victorious children. And you can see also, again, here you have Herbert Sultan's confirmation, and you can see the house. And the house played a big role in the family. I mean, this was, yes, we look at it and we see a beautiful house, but this was really about bringing the family together. And so I'm just going to go through because I'm aware of our time. We have Claire Guttsmann with her cousin Beata. And again, this speaks to how the family is super connected. And we have Clara with her son Peter and Uli. Uli is my grandfather, Ulrich, and Uncle Herbert with little Peter. And you know, this goes on, again, it's a love story. And we've got Herbert Sultan and Charlotte Bromling who meet in the house. And then this plays a big role, this next house, Krumenitz, in the research that's being performed by the students right now in the seminar. And so I think I'm going to pause on this for now. And if we have some time, I'll come back to it because I think that's given us a good idea of the family. But what I really want to say is why it was so important to me to partner with Dr. Hoffmann it was so clear from our first conversation that she had a mindset that was different than other people that I had spoken to and what I had experienced. She was open. There was no posturing. I thought, for somebody who had such an incredible background, very humble. And one thing that really spoke to me was she's very open to open access. This idea of sharing information, sharing resources, that we have to help each other, because at the end of the day, we are trying to reconstruct or to give back, restitute, and it doesn't help us to be holding information. And it was also this really unique way in which Dr. Hoffmann was bringing the students in to teach them provenance research through these actual projects and giving them things that are, you say, like, if you were to think about a doctor, and some people might balk at this, but if you were to think about your residency program, you have to work on people in order to learn, which is a kidney and which is a liver, and you might take out the wrong one, and hopefully not, but you have to do it in a real way. And I think Dr. Hoffmann really has nailed this, and I don't know of another program like it. And so that was the reason why I wanted to do this. And then also to return the family back to the places that they had been taken out of. And that was universities. And so that is why I partnered with Free University and Dr. Hoffmann, and how the project got started. And I'm sorry that I went over time. And so now I think we're over to Meike. So
okay, thank you so much. Thank you, Barani, so much for all the very kind words. I guess that we will come back to some of the aspects, but first, yes, I also want to thank the DZK, the organization team, as well as Susanne, for introducing our project and the participants. And first of all, I would like to introduce to you the professional research team who are here with us tonight. And for example, can I see them? Yes, Anna Roberta Höfelmann is part of our research team at the Free University, as well as Anja Brelo. I think that she has turned off her video. But yes, I can see Luisa Renemann, who is our research assistant. So this is the team who is working together with Barani. Barani is a team member as well. I will come to this a little bit later. And yes, welcome to our conversation tonight, and welcome the whole audience. Let me please, yes, briefly introduce you to my research field at the Free University. And if I may ask, Heinrich, can you please start with my short presentation? Yes, thank you very much. Here I show you the website of the Degenerate Art Research Center at the Free University. And I got involved in provenance research through my work at the Degenerate Art Research Center. The research center is about the confiscation, the Nazi confiscation campaign, which took place in 1937, 1938, and was about the seizure of modern art from public museums, public institutions. But what is interesting is that already this project is about reconstructing art collections. So we try to reconstruct the confiscation campaign, yes, but with this, we try to reconstruct the former museums collections of modern art. So our research is also how can I say, a two-folded strategy. We first, because the collections didn't exist any longer. They didn't exist there are no more longer the physical objects. So the only thing that exists are the documents and paperwork. And so we first have to identify all the works that belong to the former museum collections, and then look for the whereabouts. So I, yes, had many or a long time the experience of the reconstructing collections. And maybe that was the reason, because I was asked in 2017 to take over the Mosse Art Research Initiative. And now I would like to see the next slide, please. Yes, I established this initiative or this project at the Free University at the Art Historical Department, and the project is running until today. MARI is funded by the DZK as well as the Mosse Heirs, and it was the DZK's pilot project to reconstruct Nazi liquidated art collections of private persons at a university. You know, or as you all know, until then the DZK had only funded projects to check the provenance of collections in public museums. So what was new about MARI was that for the first time, descendants of victims of Nazi persecutions agreed to work together with German institutions in the field of provenance research. And in this case, in the case of the Mosse Art Research Initiative, MARI in short, the heirs, it was the case, or in this case, it were the heirs after Rudolf Mosse, who was an art patron and press tycoon of the Wilhelminian era. And in this way, in the cooperation with the heirs, the different interest parties, which are the claimants, the provenance researchers, and the current holders of claimed works, are no longer confronting each other, but working together to come to terms with the past. So this is the most important aspect about these kind of projects. And on the slide, I show you a screenshot of our MARI portal, a database customized for the project or for provenance research results. And the creation was financed by the Mosse Heirs. And yes, the MARI portal which has contributed a great deal to the success of the project. So following the example of the MARI initiative, I have carried out further collaboration before Barani approached me with her project idea. And now the next slide, please. Yes, since Barani has already explained why she chose the Free University, let me briefly explain what I think is generally enriching about this type of project format. When you work with descendants of victims of Nazi persecution, you never forget the human factor in your research. The research takes on a completely different quality. It's not just about restitutions, but about re-establishing communication and willingness to approach each other. And Barani has once again expanded the original idea of the project, but by not only cooperating with us as a representative of the heirs, but also by becoming a permanent member. I already mentioned this. Becoming a permanent member of the project team, helping actively with the research, actively and very successful, and traveling with us on archive trips. Even before the project began, she had already compiled the central archive holdings, and she explained it herself, the central archive holdings on the fate of her family and the loss of the Sultan art collection, helping the project to get off to a good start. And thanks to the intensive communication between us, the work in the team is always given new impetus. The questions that a family member asks about the documents are different from those of professional provenance researchers. Yes, this added value can only be exploited by working together, quite apart from the fact that we would not be able to use certain documents, especially those from family collections at all, or at least not so quickly. Yes, okay, this was my first introduction part. Barani, would you like to add anything else or explain us why qualified provenance research is essential from the heirs perspective?
Yes, that's one of my favorite aspects of this, actually, truly, because, you know, when I started this, I was just setting my timer. I was overwhelmed with the amount of paper that is in an archive. And now also I have a very large, we've spared you from seeing our family tree, our Stammbaum. And I was overwhelmed with the amount of information. And where does one start? And which archives do you go into? And my first experience, you know, so I started in Landesarchiv, which I did not know was post-Nazi era files. And so these were the VGA files and Wiedergutmachen files. And then the next time I go to BLHA, and through no fault of BLHA, but now it's not until I'm reading a document that says Heil Hitler on it. And I'm confused because I don't understand what I'm looking at. And I know that this was different than this. And this again goes into why you need a qualified provenance researcher. And it's not just, this is one tiny little piece of the puzzle, but it is to really understand the time frame in which things happened. What happened in 36 was different than what happened in 37 and 38, as Dr. Hoffmann mentioned before. When did the seizure of modern art start to happen? What the documents say in the archive, and also where if something is not in one file, might it be in another file? And then now you take this, I was only in Berlin, maybe writing to places outside of Berlin, but now you take all of Germany, maybe archives in Poland, as we're about to find out, Switzerland. You have to have a significant level of training and a systematic approach. And I had lots of conversations with different lawyers who said, well, we do the research, you know, for our clients. But if you don't know the difference between an OFD file and an OFP file, and I use this example all the time, and I have been since I started, it really actually makes a difference, because the OFD did not exist in 1945. It was OFP, and that was the office that was responsible for taking all of the Jewish assets, for whether it was in a tax or taking the goods from their home or taking their homes. And you need to know the difference in what you're looking for and why you're looking for it. And if you don't have a systematic and well-structured program, it limits your possibilities of what you can find. It limits your ability to actually reconstruct art collections, like ours, for instance, and then be able to have restitutions, which is very much a part of why we do provenance research. But it is also really important because if you're not trained on how to do this research and having a background specifically that, and Susanna, what you started with, I don't think that it should be an add-on. I think the provenance research needs to be its own very specific degree, and it is something that one needs to be trained in. And there is many different layers that go into it. If you don't have this, you wind up missing key pieces of information. You will not be as successful, but also in doing this research, we are bringing back the stories of these people who go from being just persecuted, nameless victims to, as Meike said, they're humans and had a human story and a life that also needs to be heard and aired out and be given a voice to. So in that way, I think it's really important. But it's also teaching the students, and as they're going through this, and I've had to learn this myself when I'm calling my father or family a little bit with the not a little bit, a lot, with the expectation of, I'm doing research, I need this. I mean, how do you not have time for it? And not realizing also the emotional aspect, that this is hard for families to often discuss and to go to places that are not easy for them to go to. And so this training and this sensitivity, it doesn't happen overnight, and it's not something just a lawyer can just pick up and do and go, I've been successful with this, but I have done this, probably taking time and a half of what a trained provenance researcher can do. And I've also made it my full-time job. So that's where I think it's hard work and someone must be trained in it. And that's my perspective on it. But Meike, I think this is a great opportunity to talk about really the training program and why you use the classes to do the work also. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Yes, an important part of the provenance research project I direct at the Free University is the integration of my teaching or the involvement of students in the research. And I have been offering classes on provenance research since 2011. And please, Heinrich, show us the next slide of my presentation. Yeah, thank you very much. The program consists of 3 modules. Each winter semester, I introduce the students into the historical context, as well as selected cases and current discussions. And each summer semester, I introduce the students to the methods of provenance research and conduct research with them in Berlin archives on the trade during the Nazi era, Nazi regime. And I developed this context for this with colleagues from the International Working Group for Provenance Research, Provenance Association, as Susanne called it before, who are included in my program as guest speaker. And at the time, it was the world's first academic training program in 2011, the world's first academic training program for provenance research on a regular basis. This is very important for the students to have the opportunity to plan their university studies and to plan their provenance research introduction. So, and 2 years later, when the Gurlitt scandal broke in 2013, or the, how do you call it, Susanne, the Schwabinger art trove, it was still the only provenance research training program, and many of my students found their first jobs in the research projects on the Gurlitt collection, because there were nobody else. Yes, so, and although I have to say they weren't finished at that time, but they were needed so urgently. Alongside the introductory classes on provenance research, I have been offering regular classes on the collection reconstruction projects I direct at the Free University. And students are introduced to the project topic and the central archival material, after which they undertake basic research on individual works. And the next slide, please. I will now tell you about the synergy effects. The advantage for the students here lies in the twofold challenge of the collection reconstruction project, as I have explained before. The works that are considered lost must be first identified before the search for the whereabouts can begin. That means for the students, they begin with the methods of work identification that they are already familiar with from their art historical studies. And this makes it much easier to get started with provenance research. And the project team, on the other hand, is relieved of the very time-consuming basic research and can concentrate on the in-depth research. Well, yes, and for the Sultan class, we have modified the teaching somewhat. Thanks to Barani's discoveries, we have so much family correspondence and archival sources that we are dependent on the help of the students to analyze them. The students are presented with forms designed by us, which indicate what should be taken into account when evaluating the sources. Yes, and Alexander, can you tell us a little bit more about this? You know, as Susanna already mentioned, Alexander took part in the first Sultan class last winter semester and achieved very good research results. Alexander, what interests you about provenance research in general, and what experience have you had with the Sultan class?
Well, thank you, Dr. Hoffmann and Barani, for letting me speak today. To me, it was funny when Dr. Hoffmann now mentioned kind of that provenance research is a kind of unknown field to like a broader public. It kind of remembered me on how I kind of heard about it for the first time, because I knew that I wanted to do something related to recovering lost art in some way. That was what I thought of when I graduated from high school. And I did an internship in an art gallery. And I remember the curator, I was telling her about, like, she was asking me, what do you want to do? And I was like, I'm actually interested in that. And she was like saying to me, okay, then you should really look into provenance research, a term that I'd never heard before of. And then I looked at, and I found that like at FU Berlin, there is a program kind of designed to train in provenance research. So this is how I kind of like, yeah, came to that subject. Yeah, and then I did first I did all the classes that Dr. Hoffmann mentioned. So I joined the lecture in my first semester where we had all the different speakers, and the seminar on like an introduction on provenance research, and then the semester after that I did a seminar that Dr. Hoffmann offered on archival research in Berlin archives related to Third Reich art dealers in Berlin. And then, yeah, I took the Sultan class, and this was like, yeah, sorry, I'm drawing a big circle here, but I just wanted to mention it because I felt like that it was helpful to have this sort of background at first, because I felt like if I would have been just thrown into it with no academic background in a way, then it would have been probably a lot harder. But like having had a little bit of experience with like the one seminar that I did before, and also having heard of other, like in the lecture of other provenance researchers, how they approach the subject, it was kind of a good basis to yeah, go forward basically. Yeah, and yeah, I don't know how much, I think that's like enough for now, probably, but yeah.
Yes, Barani, would you like to add your experience with the Sultan class?
Yeah, and also, Alex, you can, I have a question for you, because you hit on something that, as I experienced as a untrained person, like you said, coming in, if you had come in just into that class, not having had that background before, what was it? How did that structure help you in the work that you then did? And how did that, because you were really successful in your research in the class where we met, and how did that help you? Because for me, that is, again, why I think we need this a coordinated and systematic approach. So yeah, I'm interested to hear your perspective on that.
Well, I think for me, I think thinking back of like when I entered the archives, for example, it was I had this sort of like confidence that I could just like write to an archive, because it's still like a big institution where you don't really know who am I speaking to, and you don't have a personal contact with someone. So I was, because Dr. Hoffmann introduced us in the seminar before, she introduced us to the archive, I the Federal Archive didn't feel like something very far away and very closed up. So I was like confident to like, okay, I'm just gonna write an email and see what happens really. And I think yeah, I think that really helped, like the sort of confidence that I had, also knowing that I could always refer to the project and to the DZK and the FU Berlin when I emailed people that I wanted information of. That was really helpful, that I knew I could rely on that, while as well at the same time I was already familiar with certain databases and how they work and what to kind of put into the search bar. And I think what helped me the most actually was the fact that Dr. Hoffmann also taught us that we can just, it doesn't always have to be a certain very academic point where you have to start. You can also just do, as Dr. Hoffmann called it, a wild Google research, and then you can just, and from there you find little piece and you're like, oh wow, okay, there's just someone mentioning this name. And from there I kind of went further and was like, okay, maybe I can find something there. But then this kind of connected to the fact that I was confident enough to just email people who weren't even in an archive or something about this subject really.
But Alexander, you have the experience, so can you please tell us what is the difference between my general classes, so to speak, and now the Sultan class with Barani as a part of the teaching team? Is there a difference, and what is the advantage from this, or yeah, what is your experience with the class in that case? That from that aspect.
Yeah, sorry, of course. I think to me, it was kind of having someone like Barani in the class, who first of all is very, like I remember I was asking Barani if she could help me to get to certain files, and Barani was like very open and helpful, and you know, that kind of, I think maybe sometimes you're a bit more shy as a student to go up to a teacher or a professor and ask for help, maybe. I think that helped for sure a lot. But for me, it was also the fact that I knew someone would read what I had found out. I think that was very important for me. I think that kind of motivated to go like an extra mile, sort of, because I could have just let it be with like the files that were mentioned in the Excel that we were given in the beginning. But knowing that, well, you have this personal curiosity, of course, and this personal will to find as much as you can. But then when you know that there's someone actually reading this, and when you know there's someone to whom this is actually important, it kind of makes you go an extra mile and wanting to reconstruct what happened to this person, especially when it is a victim of National Socialism.
Okay, I also want to add something, because for me, of course, it was also very important to have Barani with me, because she knows much more about, of course, about her family than I do, and this was very helpful if we get confused about the family branches and so on. But it was really more, because I cannot explain maybe very precisely, but you know, it became more authentic, so to say, to have a family member with us, and to yes, the goal is different. That was my feeling, that was my experience. So maybe Baran, you also want to talk about this a little bit, or from your perspective.
Yeah, thank you. Actually, if I may, just because Alex, you said something really important that I think a lot of the viewers don't know. So as the class is structured, students are given a certain list of archives and files that they need to go and look for. And Alex was being very humble, but he really went above and beyond and started writing to different archives. I mean, Leipzig, Ravensbrück, his the person in the family that he was studying is Hannah Zost. And he went without asking, without, there were key pieces of information, but you really uncovered files and things that we knew nothing about. And what was amazing was that I saw myself as really just the package holder, the messenger, to then bring it to Hannah Zost's family, her grandchildren, her children. Can you just tell us, what was that like? You found information, was it hard? Was it, yeah, I don't want to put words in your mouth. So what, if you could, and I'm not going to call out, there are family members here today, so don't be nervous. But I think I think maybe it's a nice opportunity to hear, because this is such a unique perspective, as Meike has just said, and the authenticity of it. Because for me, sitting in the class, I was a little bit, there's a lot of different, I'll go into that, but I'm also sitting amongst the real researchers and the people who I hold in such high regard. And so to be included was also a gift for me, as somebody who often stood more in the research role and struggles sometimes in the family role. And I'll go into that a little bit later, but I'm really curious to hear if you could speak to that, because you had such an interesting family member. She had a very big and descriptive life. And I think it answered a lot of different pieces that were unknown, and maybe I might say maybe healed wounds. I know for other pieces of information and different family members, that was certainly true. Can you maybe just guide us a little bit? What, you have as a student a lot to already do. What was that like for you? And then what did you find out? Was there anything in particular that really, it's something like that stood with you?
Well, thank you for that question. Well, to me, I think it was a lot of coincidences playing into this as well. Let's say I had a file to start with. I had 2 or 3 files to start with that were, like already mentioned at the beginning of the class. Barani and Dr. Hoffmann already knew that they existed in the Federal Archive, in the State Archive of Berlin, and but they weren't accessible immediately. So I wanted to start, and I was like, okay, I'm going to check them out later. And so I did what Dr. Hoffmann taught us with like a wild internet research, sort of. Just typed in Johanna Soest's name, and I came across a couple entries. And I think what actually started it off was the fact that I found a weird internet page that was it was hosted by Siemens. And it was sort of like, I don't even know exactly what it was. It was somehow a student project for engineers, I'd say. Like some people who are related to Siemens, but not like in a historical way, but like proper engineer trainees. And I think it was like sort of like a class trip, a field trip. They went to Ravensbrück, where Siemens had their forced labor camps and a concentration camp. And they kind of like, as like a little project, I think, we're looking into some files or something. I don't know. But it was a weird page that kind of referred to that project. And they mentioned quotes from people that were forced to work in these forced labor camps. And it was a quote, something very trivial. It was like, oh, I worked in Hall 2 and Hall 7. And then it said Johanna Soest. And I was like, okay, wow. So now I know for sure that she was in, well, it could be a coincidence. It could be someone else whose name is that as well. But and from there, I was like, okay, I have something. And so I contacted, with what I said before, with the confidence of like, okay, I can just contact people, basically. I contacted Siemens, and I contacted the Gedenkstätte in Ravensbrück, the memorial service. And well, while Siemens was very uncooperative, the Gedenkstätte was not. They were really nice. They were very interested in helping. They already had published a leaflet or a book with like loads of people that were victims of forced labor, and they were actually asking if I could provide them with more information on Johanna Soest, if I should maybe find some. And it was really nice, and they kind of directed me towards this, how to approach Siemens, and then through that, I think, no, it was another entry that I found on a different internet page. I came across the files in Saxony in Leipzig. But so it was a lot of coincidences essentially, but yeah.
Well, I would like to add something, because I really try to teach the students to build up a research strategy, but we start with this wild Google research. That is true, and to motivate them, and that is what they can, of course, but you know, the essence is to build up a research strategy, of course. So yeah, but it's okay.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to.
Yeah,
No.
It's
We learned a
okay.
lot more, and I
Yeah.
think I want to mention that we got a very broad perspective and a lot
Yes.
of like, we learned a lot about how to. I think what I enjoyed the most, I will make this quick because I think I'm a lot over time, but like we learned a lot in your classes on how to judge certain information that we got, like where to put them in the time frame, how to read this and not take everything for granted. And yeah, sorry,
Yeah.
I just wanted.
Yeah. No, and you get the point, you know, because provenance research is really a lot about context and information exchange, and this is of course something I wanted to teach you, that you are able to ask experts, you know, and yeah, sometimes they are not so friendly, but on the other hand, there are enough persons who are really interested in information exchange, and yeah, that is how it works, and yeah, so in the end, you got the point. So maybe Barani, you wanted to add some aspects.
Yeah, thank you so much, Alex. You definitely did not go over time. I think it's very informative, and it's really important, because that's not a perspective that I can give, you know, and still not having this systematic approach. I can tell you that my files, I don't have a systematic approach, and oftentimes I'm wasting time going into the wrong places. I have to dig myself back out, and there is this mix, and you know, when you said that you also do other things, you are a musician, you're an actor, this kind of creative thinking, I would think, and I don't want to make assumptions, would help with how you are looking at information, because there is a certain amount of creativity, and again, it is this formula of teaching the systematic approach. It's the formula of also knowing when to look outside the box, and it's a science, and it's a creative science. So you have to be willing to turn this Rubik's Cube and keep seeing what might come out of it, and then knowing also when, you know, you can't go down too far this rabbit hole, because you'll lose time and funding, and you know, so there's a lot of different moving pieces, and I'm really grateful for what you've just shared. And I'm sorry for the Siemens experience. And this is something that I have obviously, I share this experience with you, and I've often wondered, and students in this semester have had these experiences, and it's really off-putting, and especially to a young researcher, to somebody who's totally new in this. I mean, when you're being barked at, and you're looking at sensitive files, everybody's going to have a different experience with these files. And this is something I talk about a lot, and why also I got into this work is because I grew up with a very specific narrative, and it was us against them, the perpetrator and the victim. And for me, I saw us as having a shared history that in our generations, and even if it was, you know, direct survivors of either side, that we were handed a history and left to clean up the mess. And, you know, people often say, oh, the history is problematic. History isn't problematic. People are problematic. History is history. And I feel bad for history for getting the blame for it didn't do anything. It's just being history. But it's the people who have left us with this bag to hold. And it is a very heavy bag. And, you know, I give you a lot of credit for also being willing to go into the hard and difficult parts. It's not easy to start looking into concentration camp or work camp records. And also then, you know, at least as I would see it potentially, you now bring this back to a family member, and how are they going to feel and how are they going to react? And so this takes a lot of training from somebody who is really knowledgeable. I have bungled it enough times with my own family. It took me, I'd say, a year and a half to realize that my family wasn't being difficult in not giving me things or remembering things. This was hard history for them to actually own and to be a part of. And so this is also important to realize that when a provenance researcher is doing this, they are neutral. A lawyer has an outcome that they're looking for. A journalist has an outcome that they're looking for. They want to write a story from a certain perspective, and maybe it's not a positive perspective, but they're looking for an angle. And a provenance researcher is just trying to reconstruct the story, to find something. And this is important. It's essential, because without it, our perspectives, whether which side of the history we're coming from, is shaping how we're going about it and what we expect and the outcomes that we want. And obviously, as a provenance researcher, you're going to have your own perspective and what you want from it. But to be able to have people in the field who know how to do this research and be able to have that, take a step back and to do it not from the place of a desired outcome, because the outcome can be multiple outcomes and it can be also shifting, and being able to roll with that is really important. And I think that's something that you did really well. For me, to be in the class was life-changing. It was more than I could have asked for. And the day that it really hit me was I gotten used to coming to class, and I was looking for something, and then all of a sudden I looked at the wall and there was this life-size picture of Clara Guttsmann, my great grandmother. And I realized that if my grandparents could see her image on the wall, and to know that there were people who really care about this history, who are holding it with love and commitment to restoring the past, to reweaving a torn fabric, I think that it would maybe have healed a lot of wounds and changed some of the ways that they felt about Germany. And you know, I am very grateful to Meike for taking a leap of faith. You know, she's allowing a stranger essentially into her classroom. This is, you don't know what's going to come out. You know, there's emotions, and we had to learn, you know, together. And I really looked to her to guide me in the moments where, you know, in outside things, where what was the desired outcome. For instance, you know, I can have an emotion and I can have feelings about it, but is that going to really get us to the end goal, and what is it that we want to accomplish with the project? And so this was a huge learning for all of us. And it really helped me to realize that I needed to define my role for myself. And that meant not so much being the heir because, or just family member. One, because that felt very passive and also a little victimish, but it wasn't productive for the end result. And if the end result was to help us move forward together and create a new narrative, and to help be supportive to provenance researchers today, then I felt like I had a job to do. And that meant stepping outside of what felt good or not good, and to think about really what was going to help us all to be successful in this, and now and in the future. And this, being a part of this class, I think is not something that can be just replicated by reading a book. And I've heard also different archivists explain, that they've had people tell them, their professors, oh, you don't need to go to an archive, you can just read it in a book. But oftentimes the thing in the book that has been cited is wrong, or the citation, the names are spelled wrong. I mean, the importance, again, and I saw this time and time again through this really painstaking research in the class. And so being allowed to participate in this way fulfilled something in me that I didn't really understand, and it's still ongoing. And it also has allowed me to learn things about family members that I didn't know, really amazing things, and it's connected me to a network of family that I never had access to before, from, my cousin Judith. And this might sound silly, but she has a hobby that I absolutely love. It's wood carving, and things that made sense, that I just fit in like a puzzle piece. And I met family in Sweden, and people started contacting me from around the world, and we had a family reunion this past summer. All of this is from the class. Had this research not happened, these relationships would not have been developed. And I don't think you can't put a price tag on that. And I think that is something no lawyer, no journalist, no outside person who isn't just focused on the teaching and the reconstruction of the history and these collections and the human aspect of it, they won't be able to see that. And then you have to layer the very huge complexity of art history. So we haven't even touched that part of it. So this is like, we need multiple degrees to be able to understand this. And this is what I have learned. And so I think, I don't know, Alex, if you have any other points that you want to add to it. But that's it, or Meike.
Well, thank you so much, Barani. That was really very nice. But I think maybe Susanne, what about the time? Do we have time to continue, or should we open to the audience, or what do you think? Do you want to conclude?
I'm amazed. I was going to say people should write things into the chat if they have something that they want to come back to, but everybody's been, I think, riveted, and nobody even thought about the chat. So feel free to still write something in there. But I think we can certainly open the discussion. For me, while you're all gathering your thoughts, for me, what strikes me is this project is different because of its collaborative approach and what it demonstrates. And I don't think if this can be replicated, because it's very much based on the people who work on this project and how they interact with each other. But I think what it demonstrates is something really important, that provenance research, maybe more than any other form of historical research, does not exist in a void. It directly affects people. And I think it would be, well, I think it's important to bear that in mind because I've had in my practice and also elsewhere, I've come across two instances where families were pretty much shocked when the provenance researcher turned up at their door with what they had found. Because, like Barani said, this kind of research takes families to places where they might find it hard to go to. And I think that is part of what a provenance researcher needs to understand. It's great to know about the archives and about the historical context, but at the end of the day, it's about people. And I think that is a factor that we probably don't talk enough about. And I hope that everybody else has now gathered their thoughts and comes up with lots of questions.
May I add one piece of that? I'm very grateful that you just said that, because I actually failed to mention probably one of the biggest pieces of this, which is, and it's something I don't, I'm just going to go into it because it's a bit emotional for me. I come from, so my family obviously is Jewish. My grandfather comes from a secular family, and this is the Sultan family, the Sultan Victorious Guttsmann family. But my grandmother's family, the Feldman side, and the Stechler side, was religious. And my grandmother never would have married my grandfather had it not been for the Nazis. That he would not have been a suitable candidate. And they met and fell in love in the UK. And one of the things that really shocked me when I came here was I reached out to various Jewish organizations, and I got no traction, and I didn't get any support. And it wasn't until I reached out to one organization, to Chabad, and I finally had somebody to speak to about my experiences, what I was doing here in Berlin, and I was welcomed with such open arms. And after going, and I didn't touch into the silos, and now, and why we need this collaborative approach, and bringing people from these different organizations together. But what was really interesting to me, and this is probably a subject for another talk, was that the Jewish community, the official Jewish community, and yes, I'm saying that maybe as the heir, I'll put that hat on for a moment, I can say it, was just I didn't see them involved in this work. Obviously, I don't know everybody and all the work, so I do apologize if I have misspoken. But I asked so many times, and how's the community involved? And what really I realized was this is also an opportunity to rebuild the Jewish story. Which really this is also about, and bring in the Jewish community today and reconnect. There's a lot of people here who didn't know about their own history, and maybe because of their generations. But this project has also allowed us to, and me in particular, to now bring back my learning to my community. And I can't really put that into words right now. My grandmother, as I said, was religious. I was not very religious, and I used to like to put that to her. And what I didn't realize was, and every time, she just showed up with love, didn't comment on it, she was planting the seeds. And those seeds have been watered and grown. And it is because of this now that I feel that I can bring back to the Jewish community information, and also help connect these dots in a way that it feels like hadn't been connected before. And it has also brought me back home to the Jewish community. So I think it is a really also very personal experience in a way that I don't necessarily talk about when we're just talking about the research. But yeah, you would not have found me going in the past to Shabbat services on my own, and now it's not something that I would miss. So yeah.
Well, big changes. Right. We've been talking, and I hope you've all found it, well, more than interesting. I found it fascinating, I must say, because this is certainly different from other research situations that I have witnessed over the years. I also think it perhaps says something about the need for training provenance researchers in this country, but I'm sure we're preaching to the converted with this audience here, so there's probably not much point in making a big statement. But would anybody like to come up with comments, questions? Or is it complete stunned silence? There's always this pause now before somebody picks up the baton and raises the hand. If not, we'll just go stop and go home.
I see a question in the chat.
Okay, there's the chat. Since I encourage people to use the chat, I should actually. Here we go.
Had my glasses
That's
on.
Susanne Kiel. Well, it's so sad that there's no information in Hamburg about the removal goods. The lift that came up, the lift is, of course, something that has kept Susanne Kiel and Katrin Kleibel busy for many, many years. lift vans.
I don't know that we're done with it yet. I think I feel like we might find some information somewhere.
And the research about the harbors and the storage places is still ongoing, so you never know what may still emerge. And she will certainly be in touch if something comes up. So that's good. No, I think everybody's just taking home their thoughts, maybe.
I think I would have a question actually.
Most certainly.
I'm actually wondering what the project is now leading to exactly. Is it leading to, you know, court cases, restitution cases? Is it leading to, I don't know, to being a pilot project for training provenance researchers? Is it leading to, I don't know, a publication, something?
Well, that's really a good question, and I think we can spend a lot of time on this, answering this. But well, to be short, of course, to reconstruct the art collection, to know about the art collection, to be able to evaluate the role of the Sultan couple within the art world of Berlin at that time, but of course, it is also about restitution, but not only. This is not our primary goal, and Barani can add, of course, something to this. But yes, I also want to explain that that it is our primary goal is to find together about the research, I think, and to ask questions from our findings to the current society, so to speak, and to learn to deal with it. Yeah, in short, maybe to shape a joint culture of remembrance, and together with the students. That is my goal, and maybe Barani would add from her perspective.
Yeah, thank you for that. And for remembering, yeah, that is the other key part, is this an active culture of remembrance, and we do that in this moment. This is a active cultural of remembrance because of how we are talking about the family. The other thing that is, you know, we have a huge family tree. And according to German inheritance law, it will be a massive undertaking should we find a painting, in which we have found paintings, and we have to verify. So you're not going to rip up paintings into 50 pieces. And why? And when I started this, it was never about money, and it was never about finding something and getting it back. I see a different way of restitution in this. And the idea that excites me is that the painting stays where it is, and we create the story that is living with that painting. And rather than signing documents and contracts that they turn the painting back over to us, they sign a document and a contract of that this story never gets separated from this painting when it gets sold, wherever it goes, and that it is a narrative about the work that went into finding it, who this family was, being very honest and open about the history, not whitewashing it or leaving out the details that are uncomfortable, but also not being, you know, trying to creating a balance in this narrative, and leaving a way for people to interact later on with more information and to learn about the family. And I see that as something that allows, it's a win-win situation, because, you know, when you get something back, it doesn't stop the pain, and it doesn't heal the wounds. And eventually, it's like when people win a lottery, maybe for a year their life has changed, but they go back to being the same people that they were. And in this way, I think that we actually move forward as a society together. We heal the wounds for Jews and for anybody who was persecuted by the Nazis. And we heal the wounds for Germany. And we show how we can come together and to create a story. And when you show that kind of collaboration, you've woven a strong fabric. We can't build something out of something that is negative. It doesn't work that way. And you only perpetuate something negative. But when we do something that is positive focused, it continues to have a positive impact. And that's my hope for what we find. And there are places where the narratives are different and there's difficulty. And I look at this as a really exciting opportunity to have a new kind of conversation, because it is difficult to go into a museum or museums to come in as an Arab who maybe think, oh God, she wants our stuff. And no, I want to have a conversation, and I want us to see what's possible that we can create together. And you know, I want to, before, if it's okay, I just want to share something really quickly from the flip book, because we were talking about this, and that is this page over here. I talked about how the family was really united, and the love that went through this. But this particular picture is really interesting because we've got one of the family homes was in Kumanitz, which one of the students in Meike's class is researching very thoroughly today. And you have over here, you've got my grandfather, Uli, behind him is Peter, and you have over here a little, I think that this is actually Barbara Sultan and Hannah Zost, the young Hannah Zost. And when you go to the next picture, again, you see them here. I don't know if they're practicing for a play that they're going to put on, but they were just being children and bringing this story together. And it's this is restitution also today when we're having this conversation. And I think that it's important to see that and to know that, because this can live next to the paintings as well. And also, I think it's important when we look at restitution and the paintings, it's important that they are able to be seen. It will have more of an impact to be seen by all the people who come into a museum than when it lives in someone's house. And this is only my, this is my personal opinion. And then the story dies down. And then that story's gone. It will last maybe half a day in a news cycle, maybe another day, but then it'll be gone. But when you have you have this, and then you have the paintings in a museum, and you put the story with it, I think that you have a long-lasting impact.
Thank you, Barani. Caroline Flick just added information in the chat again about the lift van, that the database Looted Cultural Assets also say there's no information. But, we never give up, and it's always possible that something will emerge from a dusty basement at some point or other. So we've had a lot of talk, a lot of thoughts. We are now at about 7:30. I think if there are no further comments or questions, we might let everybody escape into a beautiful summer evening. And Caroline Flick still in the chat. Maybe Caroline wants to ask a question. No, that's fine. So yes. Thank you very much for joining us tonight. I hope everybody's taking home some thoughts and ideas to further consider. And of course, the basically call to action, provenance researchers need training. This is very important. I think we're all agreed on that. And I hope you join us for the next round of the colloquium, which will be again on colonial matters. And I just say many thanks and